Sunday Morning Quarterback with Jay Stockwell and Bob Frady.
Yumi, how are you, man?
I
Saturday
am
morning.
feeling
Woohoo!
fine.
Woohoo!
Yeehaw!
We won a game. We won a game.
Yeah,
We won a
well,
road
hold on.
game.
We didn't win the game. The team
That's
won
true.
the game. We were there
Yes.
watching them win the game.
Yeah.
And so goodness prevails. The brawling Nebraska defeat the culturally inappropriate University of Illinois 20-7. And there is joy in Lincoln today.
What a defensive performance. It starts with the, goal line stand, three fourth down stands for the defense. What a defensive masterpiece it was for the boys.
Well, I tell you, Jay and I were actually sitting next to each other watching this game in the comfort of Jay's basement because the weather went from summer to bummer in like 3 days in Illinois.
In Minnesota. We're in Minnesota, Bob.
Remember, yeah, but the weather in Illinois too. Both places is terrible.
Okay.
And so here comes Illinois, get the opening kickoff, 5-yard penalty. They go backwards, and then immediately matriculate all the way down the field to the 1-inch line. Now they have a giant at running back. He's 6'3", 250. I forget the kid's name, but on the goal line when you need to gain 1 foot, I would say give it to the giant. If he just falls over, he'll get in. So what do? They don't go with the giant. They go with the smaller guy. He gets stuffed. And then what do? Shotgun formation with the switch to go. My least favorite play in the history of football is shotgun formation on short yardage fourth down. It's like, what are you doing? You're just giving the defense time. So it serves you right. Bad coaching staff from Illinois. Bad play calling. Got a giant. Use the giant. Get him in the end zone. But I'm thankful that they didn't, because the Big Red prevailed and then marched down the field and scored a field goal.
You mentioned penalties. Boy, the penalties were frustrating. Nebraska had 10 penalties for 70 yards. But if you watch the Matt Rule presser, he actually came out after the officials. Apparently, Illinois was making calls on the line of scrimmage to try to draw our guys off, and that is illegal. In fact, he had made a call to the league office this week to clarify if that was illegal, and it is illegal. It's against the rules, and they're not supposed to do that. So very rarely, coaches don't talk about officiating because you can get in trouble for that. But Miles kind of came out after him and sort of defended his guys.
You mean Rule?
Yeah, Miles. Yeah, Miles is our guest later.
He's our special guest. Hold on, let's focus. We'll get to him. Stay on the game.
Bob, you have been interrupting me lately. What is going on over there?
Because if I don't interrupt you, I'll be silent the entire time.
Let's do the Husker Max 2-minute drill.
Do the stats.
All right. So fairly even game, like 312 to 310 in terms of total yards. But we, again, 19 rushes for 21 yards we held Illinois to. So our rush...
Were you surprised by those numbers? I was shocked to see those numbers were so close. I thought Nebraska just dominated the game. And then the yardage is the same.
No. See, so in the second half, we got into the red zone 4 times and took away 3 points. So the turnover battle, I think we won the turnover battle overall, but we had a costly fumble in the second half. The penalties I already talked about, but time of possession, 37-22, very, very much in Nebraska's favor. We were 1-1 for fourth down conversions. They were 1 for 4. Again, we had our 3 stops, which was awesome. And our sack game came back. We were 2 sacks for 8 yards, so we're still up there in the overall sacks. But again, the rush defense and the overall defense, pretty fantastic. Let's just check in with some of the writers here. Tad Stryker, I love this guy. The black shirts patiently, time and time again, showed offense how to close out a team, but the offense simply was unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Yeah, lots of commentary about how sort of inept the offense was this game.
You know what? For sports writers, I feel bad for sports writers because they have to create controversy just to get clicks.
The offense was kind of bad.
You know what? In the first half, it was weird. It was like Jekyll and Hyde. Was there like a full moon or something? Because they were great in the first half.
Yeah, yeah.
Long completion. Maybe when Washington went down, that impacted things. But 17-0. I looked at you halfway through the second quarter. I'm like, how do we behave when we're up 17-0? And
Yeah, exactly.
they scored a TD like 2 seconds later. I was like, I should just shut my mouth for the rest of the game.
So the last one was Christopherson. This is Sam McEwen. So long as this offense remains young and inconsistent, burns timeouts like bingo cards, and loses wideouts at a rate I do headphones, the Husker defense has to play at a master level. I would agree with that.
It was pretty tough watching some of those formations. It's like, you hope that you have a mature offense and you don't. And you're playing a lot of kids because a lot of people have gotten injured. And you gotta fake it until you make it. And it's Malachi Coleman had his first catch, which was lovely to see. Should have had a second catch. He was wide open, but Harburg just overthrew him.
Rule talked about that talked about how he stepped up in the post game presser. So yeah, good to see Malachi out there. He's going to be a great player.
It is. Here's my prediction, and you're gonna hate this. You're gonna hate it. Jeff Sims is coming back.
Oh, you know what? Well, let's talk about him for a minute. I thought what a great teammate he's been on the sidelines.
He's been fantastic. Yep.
Sitting over there with his high ankle sprain and just being a great teammate. This is something I'm trying to get across to both my kids. Like when you're not in the game, just be ready when your name is called. But when you're not in the game, you got to be a great teammate. And Jeff Sims is providing everyone a really good example of that.
It's got to be tough. He got off to a tough start, then he got injured. It's like, you're the competitor and you wants to be out there, and you have the choice. You can pout or you can be supportive. And it's great to see him, at least from what we can see on TV, being supportive.
Our prediction of, bowl eligible in a month is very possible now. We've lost the last 3 games with Illinois.
Don't go too far into the future. Focus on today.
Dare I say anything about the potential to win the Big Ten West, which is an absolute, horror show.
It's a car crash.
Yeah, it's a car show. One more, Arnie Just, one of the words used to describe Nebraska last week, hesitant. There was none of that on defense against Illinois, so that's good. Last one from Scott Ritchie from the Champaign News-Gazette. Nebraska did all the things it used to do wrong under Scott Frost, silly penalties and turnovers, and got away with it because Illinois was so much worse. Well, I wouldn't just throw it all on Illinois. Our defense is very good. So, but the silly penalties and turnovers, I agree.
The defense is very good against teams that aren't very good. And teams that are very good, like Michigan, it has its issues. But
yes,
most teams aren't like Michigan. Who else are they going to play that's like Michigan? Nobody. It's a good effort from the Black Shirts. They did a great. It was nice. It was nice being able to do this and have it mean something. Whereas last year, it's like this. This lane is closed. Please go over here for your touchdowns. It's nice to see the Black Shirts. Now, I think that we need to get to our personal predictions for the game. We got it wrong in the last podcast. Nebraska was the underdog in this game by 3.5 points. And you had predicted what?
21-17.
That's right. And I had predicted 20-14, 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, which is exactly what they had. And I have to tell you, I was rooting for Illinois to score another touchdown late in the game just to make it 20-14. And so I would impress myself. I'm like, don't do that. Don't.
I thought you said it was going to be 3-2.
That was the initial prediction. And in the second half, I think it was 3-0 in the second half. So it was good to see some glimmers of hope. I still think you got a good tight end out there who just looks like he runs around like the Incredible Hulk. It's like just throw him the ball, get him open, throw him the ball. But hey, let's take the win. Let's be happy. We're going into a bye week. This means we get 2 weeks of happiness for the price of 1. Excellent. Excellent.
Hey, I think we need to thank our viewers. We got our data for September, and across all platforms last month, we had 60,000 viewers. So thank you very much.
What are you people doing with your time that you're listening to us? What's wrong with you? Go kiss your
And
wife or your husband or whoever. It's like, I think it is. It's harvest season, so people are out. They're harvesting, so they need something to do, so they're listening to us, which is fantastic. We love that.
yeah, yes, absolutely. In a major show of appreciation, we are going to be launching a store on our website at sundaymq.com next week. Hopefully next week. Bob's in charge of it, so we'll see how he does
Hopefully,
with his time.
slow,
Yeah.
slow you and your future selling. Stop it. Focus. We won the game. Be happy that
Yeah.
we won the game, and we have an awesome interview coming up that we had to pre-tape because of recruiting and all that stuff with Tim Miles that we're coming up next. So stay right here, and Tim Miles will be next.
So Coach Miles, let me just tell a story about how I got to know Coach Miles. So I've been really blessed to know Tom Osborne for a long, long time. And right about the time that Coach Miles got hired, a cousin of mine who had adopted a baby in South Carolina or North Carolina, kid grew up to be 6'9". Paul Malay is his name. Still playing professional basketball in South America, but at the time he was considering coming to Nebraska. So I called Coach Osborne, and he said, "Hey, we just hired this basketball coach. I'll have him call you." And I hung up, and literally 5 minutes later, Tim Miles calls, and so I gave him all the information. And Paul really wanted to play right away, and so Tim knew of a team, South Carolina, I believe, South Carolina Aiken, I think, and put him in touch with a friend of his. And Paul got to start and play right away. And I had completely forgot about the interaction. And I was at a conference in Scottsdale, and I was walking in. I was actually given I was on a panel discussion at this conference, and this 402 number comes up. So I answered it, and I'm like, "Somebody from Nebraska, cool." And it was Coach Miles. Well, at the end of he just was giving me the update on what happened with Paul, and I thanked him for that. And he said, "Hey, next time you're in, give me a ring. Next time you're in Lincoln." And that was literally in the first couple of months of his coaching stint at Nebraska, which lasted 7 years. And so I did that. Called him, and over time we played a bunch of golf together. Took my son down to his basketball camps, and became friends. Ended up going to multiple games. We went to the Big Ten tournament a couple times. New York. I went to games at St. John in New York. Went to College Park. Went to Michigan State. Of course, multiple games in Lincoln. And just became really over time really close to Tim. I actually went out to his first game at San Jose State. It turned out to be his 400th win, and so we've stayed in touch. And I'll tell you what, he's doing great, and you're going to hear all about it here in a minute. He was the Mountain West Coach of the Year last year. Took a team that hadn't won 20 games in 20 years and won 24 games. That went 24-14 last year. And we were going to wear the same clothes that we wore in the taping with Tim on Thursday, but I can't find the shirt I was wearing. I have no idea where it
is. We managed to find the same clothes we wore because my house isn't that big, but I understand. We will take the loss on this one. Because this is the same. Unfortunately, it is the same. And you wonder, Stockwell, you wonder why I interrupt you. You just ambled. All right, sit back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to tell a story. It's a very long story, full of detail, twists and turns. But you will be pleasantly surprised by the outcome and richer for the experience.
Well, there you go. So that is a good segue to Coach Miles. So we are going to say goodbye. Congrats to the Huskers for the big win, 3-3. Oh my God, Coach Miles. Here we go. So Tim Miles, my friend, Mountain West Coach of the Year for 2022-2023.
If only Nebraska could get a coach like that.
24-14. Puts Amari Moore on the Milwaukee Bucks. What a season. Congratulations, Coach.
Jay, thanks for having me on, first of all. I'm excited to be here. Nebraska is a place near and dear to my heart.
Hold on a second. Let's not get too excited. We're barely excited to be here. So if you're excited to be here, you might overwhelm us with your excitement.
I'm a people person, man. I'm just a lover. That's just the way it goes. But I appreciate you guys having me on so we can talk a little Spartan basketball.
Yeah, man. So tell us about the season last year. So I was there for your first game, your 400th win. In what's the arena called there?
It's the Provident Credit Union Event Center.
Yeah, nice. And that was really cool. Your family was there. How's your dad, by the way?
Dad was 3-0 last year. He came to 3 more games last year. Colorado State on the road, a couple of home games in February, and reminded me when we were in the semifinals of the Mountain West Championship that he's 3-0, and if I wanted to beat San Diego State, maybe he should be at the game in Las Vegas. I didn't do that. We lost the game.
Can we get him to come to some Nebraska football games with us?
Yeah,
because I think we're 0-3 for our last 3.
He's got a pretty good record. He's doing great.
So
going to be 97 here in a month.
97. That's what I was going to ask. That's wild. And your brother's doing good?
Yeah, my brother's great. My 3 sisters are good. The family's all doing well. My son's my son won the state championship in the state of Nebraska last year in the big schools. He at Lincoln East, he won the 400-meter dash. He got third in the 200-meter dash. Now he's up at North Dakota State running. And my daughter, Ava Grace, is going to graduate in December out here. And so Everybody's doing good, man. Everybody's doing good.
That is awesome. Well, you put together one hell of a season last year, Tim. Tell us about it. I mean, obviously, Amari Moore is a special player. But how did you put that together? And what a year, and ends with you being named coach coach of the Mountain West.
Coach of the century, I thought is what they called it, but maybe they changed it.
That was just us. That was just us saying that.
Okay.
We're trying to make a thing out of it, so just keep repeating it.
Yeah. I've heard if you tell a lie long enough, everybody will believe it. That's what I've heard.
You might become president. There you go. That's how it works.
Anything could happen. So, I think you hit the nail on the head. Omari, there's one good way to become Mountain West Coach of the Year, and that's to have the Mountain West Player of the Year, which I had in Omari. And he was terrific. Really, it was really special to watch his development. And how he, I think when we got here, he was averaging, 8 or 10 points a game. And I think he'd made 5 or 6 3-pointers the season before. And I think he made 60 some last year. So you saw a real growth and real development, but that came with a lot of hard work, not only by our coaching staff, but certainly by Omari. He was a game changer for us. And we were able to go to the transfer portal pre-NIL dough and pull out a couple guys. And it's funny as you look at the evolution of this whole thing with the transfer portal and immediate eligibility, which really changed things. It used to be recruiting was this art form. Like you'd get to know a kid and you'd figure out if you had a development plan for him and how he could impact winning and what about the educational value of the school. And now it's kind of transactional. It's, hey, how much dough do I get and for how long? And when I say 0, it usually ends the conversation real quickly.
You should tell them things like they get a free subscription to Google Analytics or something like that.
Set you up for the rest of your life. You're in Silicon Valley, man. And we're going to give you all the, analytics from our friend here, Jay Stockwell. And he's going to map out your future for you.
Let's delve into this issue a little bit. So Colin Cowherd's out there saying that NIL and the transfer portal saved college football. And clearly Deion Sanders had kind of a different vision in how he was going to do it. I thought when Colorado picked him, it was either going to work really well or wasn't going to work at all. But he leveraged both NIL and the transfer portal and managed to put together a team. And there's a wing of the media establishment that thinks this is good for college football. What's your take there?
I think good is a little heavy, but as I look at things, those pro guys like Deion, who's obviously a phenomenal professional athlete, you look at maybe in college basketball, the guys like Eric Musselman, who was a pro coach for a long time, who came in and when he was at Nevada, overhauled everything, brought in a whole bunch of new talent, does the same thing at Arkansas. there's a way to that. And of course, I was always a developmental guy. Like a lot of us traditionalists are like, you take a guy, you put together what we just talked about earlier, this developmental plan, how we're going to work together and how this is going to go. And certainly the portal with immediate eligibility. And that's really where the portal changed. If you look at some of our best guys that we ever had in Nebraska, certainly you look at a guy like Glenn Watson, Siobhan Shields, who are great high school players to develop. But I mean, those guys like Teran Petaway, those guys like James Palmer Jr., Isaac Copeland, Isaiah Rober is a developmental guy, but those transfer portal guys really, really were big for us and were some of our best players. But most of them had to redshirt. Copeland did not, but the rest of those guys had to redshirt, and that redshirt was good for them. And that's gone now for the most part. And now that there's no penalty, you obviously, where you used to lose two kids, maybe three, now you're going to double that, right? The rule in football and men's basketball, the rule in almost every other sport was you were always immediately eligible as soon as you transferred. There was just a couple of sports where that wasn't the case. Well, they waived that for football and men's basketball. There might have been one other sport like baseball or something else too. I forget. I'm not sure about any on the women's side. So forever you could play at one school and then the next year have to sit out at your next school for one season unless you got this waiver. Well, the transfer portal changed that. When they went to the portal system, what really changed was immediate eligibility. That's what changed. So now everybody that transferred for the first time was immediately eligible at their next school right away. And so more kids transferred. You could build it quicker. You could go get guys. Well, they're also open. That also introduces circumstances that aren't necessarily in the best interest of education and value and stuff like that. If there's tampering, all of those things that go in. Well, almost at the same time, NIL became a thing. And now, NIL, started year one. You ask a kid, hey, where's NIL on your thing? This was like 3 years ago. It's fourth or fifth on their list. After year two, which would have been last year recruiting, it was second or third. This year of recruiting, it's number one. It's number one. I want to know what the check looks like. And so it's really, changed that art of recruiting.
And Bob was talking, he and I were talking before you got on. Was it Utah State, Bob, or Utah?
Utah
just gave every player a brand new Dodge Ram. All 85 scholarship players got a car.
Yeah, that's unverified. That's what the tweeter says, and so the tweeter might not be telling the truth because that occasionally happens.
Everything you ever read on the internet's always true. So
there's a grain of truth to it. It might be a big grain or a tiny grain.
Yeah.
So are any alumni stepping up at San Jose State to help you compete in this new environment?
We're working on that. Yeah, and I would say that mighty oaks grow from the tiniest acorns, and I'd say we're in the tiniest acorn stage.
Nice. But there's got to be some alumni that have hit it big out there.
Think? Yeah, there are.
Yes.
Well, and we're trying to, the thing I think that you guys have in Nebraska, which is so cool, was awesome to be a part of for so long, was this kind of intensity of fandom. Like there was a true intensity of support for the student athletes, for the programs, from the fans, and certainly the media part of that too. And there was this real intensity about that.
Talk about no sit Sunday.
That was kind of fun, right?
Yeah, just talk about that. So for people,
I'm just glad we won that damn game. So I mean, we beat a team that went to the Final Four, got us in the NCAA tournament, and it was one of the most electric days. And I think hands down the best atmosphere I've ever been a part of in any way, shape, and form as a fan. I've been to NBA Finals, closeout games. I've been to all kinds of stuff. Not been to the Super Bowl. Bad timing for my profession, but you look at the amount of things that went on that day in March 2014 in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was one of the more super cool events of my life. And
who'd you beat? I can't even remember. Who'd you beat? Wisconsin. Yeah. That's right.
We beat Michigan State the weekend before at Michigan State when they were like 11 or 12 in the country, and then I think Wisconsin was 6, 7, or 8, and we beat them at home.
And then you went to the tournament and got kicked out of the game in like 5 minutes. What happened?
Well, it was the second half, kind of midway through the second half, and apparently there was what's the old Cool Hand Luke story? We got a failure to communicate or whatever. I think I told him to suck raw eggs, and he didn't take that the right way. And they did cook raw eggs. And
Yeah.
but you know what?
Well,
Baylor was really good that year, and they destroyed Creighton the next game. And it was a great experience for most of us involved.
Well, I can say as a close observer of your program, we miss you.
Well, you know what? Uh, again, Nebraska athletics. I know right now, they've hired really good men and really good women, and there's a lot of successes in a lot of different places, and I just think it's a matter of time for those sports like that I deal with men's basketball and football for that to happen again. It's too good of a place for that not to happen.
Do you think it's hard for a university to be good at multiple sports?
I think it's no, I don't. I think it's cyclical, but I think the competition and the size of these conferences are so big. And when you won the Big Eight, there was only 8 teams, right? I mean, in the old days, right? Like, and now it's at least twice as big, maybe even bigger. So the value on that conference championship, the schedules are so uneven, and I remember one year when the Big Ten expanded, Iowa, who's our next door neighbor, supposed to be a rival, right? We played them like on January 3rd, right? Of like, let's say 2015. We didn't play them again until like March. It was 14 months later before we played them one other time, and that's our rival. We only played them once a year, and it wasn't within the calendar year. And it was just like, I was just like, isn't Iowa supposed to be our right? Shouldn't we play them on occasion? And that's what the big leagues give to you. I really wish we'd get back to some form of regionality, for everyone's sake involved. So what
I wholeheartedly agree and think that all of this hoo-ha around these super conferences is going to end up destroying them in the long run.
Well, what happened with the Mountain West? If you think how the Mountain West was created in the West Coast, from the Rockies on, 100 years ago, they formed this super WAC, and they did 4 quads of 16 teams, 4 teams of 4. And it wasn't very popular, and it wasn't very well received by the fans and everybody else involved. So finally, then the 9 schools, the Mountain West schools, which at that time were Utah, BYU, Colorado State, Wyoming, New Mexico, San Diego State, and I'm missing a couple, but all got together and formed the Mountain West, right? And the Mountain West has prospered and lost some of those key members, but added real quality, added TCU eventually, then Boise, and now these California schools, Fresno and us, and Nevada, and Utah State. And so it's, some really good things have happened, but we've already seen it fail once. I don't know why it would surprise us if it happens again.
What happened in the Pac-12? Because here you got Washington and Oregon just lighting it up. Is it just that the TV came in and it was just so attractive they couldn't turn it down?
Honestly, when UCLA and Southern Cal went, I think everybody thought, the Pac-10, Pac-12 is really in trouble, and it only made sense that if the Big Ten was going to go west, they needed to build a western border. I used to tell Jim Delaney that he should build a western border by adding Oklahoma and Kansas with Nebraska. Thought that it would be great to see that football rivalry rekindled and 2 very strong schools. And then you add a premier basketball place. Because at the time they were talking about this when they were adding, just when they added Rutgers and Maryland, they were talking about trying to add Virginia and North Carolina. And I thought the Western Ridge, I didn't think it was going to go to the Pacific Ocean, but at the same time, you knew they probably had to build a Western Ridge. 2 wasn't enough. There was going to have to be a couple more. Washington and Oregon certainly are those schools. And then, it was just kind of curious to see what Cal and Stanford could do, where could they land? And they landed in the ACC, which to me is absurd. And it's absurd as sending Oregon to, just think if you're the Stanford coach, you're going to play at Miami, at Florida State, at Clemson. Good luck getting there with your softball team and your baseball team and everybody else, right? So it's a little bit, I think we're all a little bit in shock on it. And I don't like I'm not a huge advocate for the super conferences. I prefer regionality.
We agree wholeheartedly. Listen, first of all, congratulations on having the greatest nickname of any coach in basketball, which is Coach FEMA. I'm like, I saw that and I almost peed my pants because professionally I work with FEMA data all the time. I'm like, wait, there's a Coach FEMA? This is awesome. I'm like, do you get like a bunch of trailers in your yard or something? You just roll them around to different venues and like, all right, we're here, we're taking over.
The weather's nice, maybe tense.
So given all these changes, how do you compete as a coach now? I mean, your coaching ability is great. I mean, you took this team that I think they won a pair of socks the year before you got there, and you take them to almost to the NCAA. They got one sock,
for
and not even a shoe. And so, how do you compete in that environment?
Yeah, I know the Mountain West. I respect all the coaches in the Mountain West, but I felt like that I really wanted to be in this league, and I'm thankful that San Jose State hired me, and it really kind of reminded me of my very first job, Mayville. And Carrie Johnson, my wife, said at the time, she's like, "This isn't a rebuild, this is a build." And she said the same thing. She said the same thing about this job, and I think that we can put a blueprint together. We can build a winner. Our recipe works. We know that whatever league that we're in, we can find a way to compete and advance that program. And I just felt like we could do that here. And it has changed. And I tell you, Bob, the thing that concerns me is like, okay, if how am I going to recruit? And if it really does, is it really just come down to raising as much NIL money as I can to be able to? Because if you look at our league, there's 6 or 7 schools over $400,000-$500,000 of NIL money in men's basketball, and we have 0. And so, I feel bad for our kids, but we lost a player this year to a Power 5 school that he's going to make $100,000. It's hard not to tell him to not go.
Yep.
And so he did, and that's just part of the deal. But it's a little bit deflating to be on the receiving end of that, right?
Yeah, because even if you get on with these big programs and you make your NIL money, if they don't want to cut you, you're still getting paid. So you might sit on the bench and get paid versus going and playing the game and maybe making betting on yourself.
My question
is that what you look for? The kids who want to bet on themselves?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And the other thing I'd say about NIL is, everybody gets paid a little bit on the front end, right? You have a reputation as someone in your field, your industry, or whatever. So you get paid, but we pay everything on the front end with NIL. It looks like, right? I mean, I want that to be performance based. Let's put the NIL money and put a value on it. Let's make it full value if we win and go to the NCAA tournament. Let's make it half value if we have a losing record. And so if you think you're going to make 100,000 if we go to the NCAA, you're only going to make 50,000 if we don't. I mean, let's just do it. We'll call it what it is. Let's get a salary cap. Let's pay them as employees and let's get going and just have a set of rules. Because right now it's kind of the wild west on who gets what. And players are directed by collectives not to tell each other what they're getting. And why would you carry around that burden or that secret? I don't think that's a healthy behavior, to have anyway.
Right. Hey, Tim, so believe it or not, we're actually off to a really good start with Sunday Morning Quarterback. Last month, we had 60,000 views.
Wow.
So there's going to be a lot of people.
You go and watch it every day, Jay, like 3 times a day. Run that up there.
Yeah.
At a penny of you.
20,000 are my kids, but Tim, so a lot of people may be meeting you for the first time, and I think you have an incredible story going all the way back to Dolan, South Dakota. I mean, 50 people. Can you just give everyone a thumbnail of your career and how you ended up in the Power 5?
Yeah, I'm a gentleman of good fortune and good timing in my life. There's no doubt about it. I grew up in Dolan, South Dakota. I was the youngest of 5 kids. I graduated number 7 in my high school class, which we've already established. There was only 13 kids in the class. And it's, forever I told people I was in the bottom half of my class, and then a guy made me count to 13, and I saw the 7 felt right in the middle. So I wasn't a math major either, surprisingly enough. I was an elementary ed major at Mary College in Bismarck, North Dakota. because I could do the math and because it clearly provided me fourth graders or college male athletes. It's kind of the same deal. So started coaching at Northern State in Aberdeen as an NAI coach. I took the Mayville State job when I was 28 years old. They had been 2-22 the year before we got there, 2-22 before that. They were awful, won 10 games in 3 years, and we won 2 league championships, went to the national tournament, and really, did some fun things that way. Then I got Southwest State in Marshall, Minnesota. We built that team into a NCAA team, won our conference, went to the NCAA regional for the first time in school history, won the regional, went to the Elite Eight. And then I got North Dakota State, which I thought I had arrived. I thought, oh, here's this kid from Dolan, and I got the Bison job. I went to school in Bismarck, North Dakota. Everything was the Bison all the time. I was so fired up. And I was there 7 months, and we had a new athletic director during that changeover, and they pull us in, me, the football coach, the wrestling coach, and the women's basketball coach. And the AD says, we're going Division I. And everyone's okay, great. What league? Well, we don't have a league. And so we went Division I 2 years later. So 3 years Division II, 3 years Division I independent. And
Nice.
Holy cow. I mean, how about this road trip? We flew to Orem, Utah, played Utah Valley State, and then connected the next day to get to Brownsville, Texas to play Texas Pan American. Come back. It's like a 5-day, 6-day trip. We put on like 1 billion miles. I was like, could have flown first class in Delta the rest of my life. We end up back the next weekend, and it's Fort Wayne, Indiana for IPFW, over to NJIT, Newark, New Jersey, to play New Jersey Institute of Technology. Those are like some of our road trips that we took, and we fashioned this thing, and it was great. But I had a really good team. I put together
So hang on 1 second, Tim. That sounds like the travel prescription for a lot of these teams and these big collective networks.
Good luck.
What's the impact like on the kids
Awful.
who have to
It's-
make that
It's
travel?
debilitating, honestly. It hurts their grades, hurts their sleep, it hurts their mental health. It's not good. I don't like it. I didn't like it then, but we had a hell of a team now. We had a group of young kids, and I think in 2005-06, we beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin when they were 12 in the country, or 13. The next year we beat Marquette at Marquette when they were 8, and we're never behind in either game. And Jay, we had 52 turnovers in those 2 games.
Wow.
46 each game, and we're only behind, I think, 1 possession out of like 150 possessions, which tells you this: turnovers are overrated. Anyhow, Colorado State, we went out there and lost. We lost 82-80, but the AD came up to me after the game and goes, I like the way you handle your team. And he called me that spring and hired me. And Paul Kowalczyk was great. And when I got to Colorado State, we inherited a situation where there was a DUI, then there was felony identity theft by another kid, and then one of our players pulled a weapon and fired a Glock into a couch at my other player, which makes it tough in the locker room. When those things happen, people they don't trust each other. And so, are you going to pull that gun?
You better set that pick for me. You better set it. I'm gonna wreck your couch.
So oddly enough, we had to get rid of like 12 guys on that team. They were melting guns, man. And and it was crazy. So we started out awful, but we built up a winner, and we went to the NCAA my last year there and left them maybe the best team they've ever had. And then I took Nebraska and was just and it was good. It was just good fortune that we had a hell of a team, and it was good timing. And I'd always wanted to be in the Big Ten. So a chance for me. And when I grew up, my sister went to OU, and we went to some Nebraska games. Some of my best friends had moved down to Lincoln right out of college. So I'd spent a whole bunch of time. I'm probably the only guy you've ever met in your life. Well, you haven't really met me. I mean, we're looking at this Zoom thing. You know what I'm talking about. I'm maybe one of the only persons you've ever known that I was an NAI assistant at Northern State in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and I scheduled meetings with the University of Nebraska coaching staff. And it was Jeff Smith was my host. Gary Bargan was there. Danny Nee was the head coach. And I met with them for a full day. They gave me a tour. We looked at film. They showed me some offensive sets. And I was supposed to go to Kansas and meet Roy Williams and his staff like 2 days later. So it was like Friday, Saturday in Lincoln, Sunday, Monday in Lawrence. And I learned so much and did so great that I canceled my Kansas basketball trip because Nebraska was so bad that I went home. So I might be the only
Okay, so
ever done that.
Understand, we're still upset about how things ended. We're not going to get into that because there's probably some contractual reasons why you can't, but we're still upset about it.
So Tim, first, thanks for doing that. That was really cool. This is a football podcast, so and you are Coach FEMA, and it's evident that Matt Rule is in the middle of a very challenging rebuild, in particular after the Scott Frost years. What advice would you give Matt Rule? Have you ever met him? And if you were talking to him, what would you say in terms of how to execute this rebuild?
I paid attention when my son was still running track in high school, and I haven't paid as much attention since he graduated, because I would get the Lincoln paper and I'd get all the news and the updates and stuff like that. And he's a very impressive man, right? And
Yeah.
You look at what he did at Baylor, and I just can't assume that he can't figure out how to be successful in Lincoln, Nebraska with everybody's got great resources and everybody's going to have big crowds. And there's when you're in that league, the intensity of fandom, as we talked about, is phenomenal. But, I think there's some real cool things in Nebraska that not everybody else has. For instance, there's no pro sports culture. So really the young people are celebrities, and it's pretty cool for them to be a part of that. It's not that way at Rutgers and Maryland. And, it's not that way in some of those other schools, like if you're at some of those other Big Ten schools, but it's that way in Lincoln, Nebraska, at the University of Nebraska. And I think you can really build on that. And I think the support is there. I think Rule will get it done. And the hardest thing is, and he'll do it, but you just got to stick to the recipe. Again, the recipe works. Stick to your recipe.
Right.
You know what you can be and what you can do. And there's certain adaptations you always have. Try and, evolve your teaching ability and your schematic stuff and all that, but you don't have to be anything else than who you are. And then a lot of things have to fall in place. And again, you're in a gigantic league, right? With all these teams, but let's get to a bowl game, man. I got there. People would plan trips. They're like, oh, we can't do that. We got a bowl trip. We don't know where we're going. We might be going to Nashville. We might be going to Jacksonville, Florida. They knew they were going somewhere. And God, it's been since Mike Riley and the Foster Farms Bowl or whatever it was that I think the Huskers haven't been to a bowl. Let's get back to that bowl game stuff. And that was fun. And it was great for the basketball coach, because then they didn't even think about me till after the first of the year.
So the schedule is favorable. So we're on the road tomorrow at Illinois. And then it's Purdue, Northwestern, and Michigan State who's having some trouble. So theoretically,
Michigan State's having trouble.
Theoretically, they could be bowl eligible in a month, right?
The typical Husker optimist, right there. If there's one of him, they've cloned him and made a million.
Oh, it's okay. Now you have to answer something honestly for us.
Oh,
I couldn't right now, the worst fans in the Big Ten, in our experience, are Minnesota fans.
When they're yelling mean stuff. Yeah, when they're yelling mean stuff, you kind of think. I think we had the good fortune. There was really never an incident or anything like. They're always going to yell stuff, but we didn't ever really have nobody threw anything. There was no. And, fans are fans, and I've been called a lot of names. Some I had to look up. The problem was I looked them up on my phone. I'm like, God, if they go, if I get in trouble and the feds come in, and they search my search history, they're really going to know me. I didn't document this. That didn't happen. That was a lie, but it was a pretty good story. Sounded good.
Tim, you look great. California looks great on you, man. You're tan. You lost some weight. You got a nice fresh haircut. You look
right.
Good
no, I just actually groomed today, so there you go.
So final question, and we'll finish right on 30 minutes. How is your golf game?
You're right.
I knew this was coming up.
Listen,
I knew this was coming up.
Jay. Hey, Bob, you got to be careful with Coach Miles. I'm just telling you. You'll be ahead 17 holes. You'll be up like $300, and then you'll be one hole later. You'll be sitting in the bar, forking over the dough.
I will tell you this: I still play that weak bleed, slicey, fadey thing that gets a little bit out of whack on me, but I still have that handicap at the right number that allows me for success in that bar. afterwards. And that.
I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I hit a couple of good shots.
Yeah,
I got
I
wow.
mean, par to end. It's a miracle.
Expert on the press on how and when to apply the press.
I mean, you either win coming in on the on the understanding what the rules of the game are, the rules of engagement, like where do we stand, how many strokes do I get, or you win right at the end going out when you just got to press your way into success.
Wait, Jay gives you strokes?
Well, he should.
I didn't know he knew how to do that.
He's way better. I'm just
like Jay just walks to the course assuming he's getting 6 strokes from you.
I think
I'm getting 6, right?
I think
Your handicap's lower than mine.
The Husker coach gratuity is what we call that. I think you can just...
All right, with us, Coach. Go Big Red!
Go Big Red!